Story number 1. The Woman in the Mirror. I've always been drawn to old buildings, places where time seems to stand still, preserving whispers of stories long forgotten. So when I took a job as the night manager at the Magnolia Grand Hotel in Tampa, Florida, I felt like I was stepping into a living museum. The Magnolia, with its grand facade and ornate architecture, had been a staple of the community for over a century. The sprawling verandas, intricate woodwork, and the centerpiece antique mirror in the hallway were the hallmarks of its enduring charm. The hotel had a storied past, filled with tales of glamour and tragedy. But one story stood out above the rest: the legend of the woman in the mirror. According to local lore, decades ago, a guest named Evelyn Whitaker had died under mysterious circumstances in room 217. Her sudden death had cast a shadow over the hotel, and ever since, guests and staff alike reported seeing her reflection in the antique mirror. Even when no one was around, I remember my first night on the job vividly. The lobby was dimly lit, the grand chandelier casting soft glows on the polished marble floors. As I made my rounds, ensuring everything was in order, I couldn't help but notice the antique mirror hanging majestically at the end of the main hallway. It was an exquisite piece, framed in ornate gold with intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story of their own. Around midnight, as the hotel settled into its nightly rhythm, I decided to take a closer look at the mirror. The hallway was eerily quiet, the only sound being the distant hum of traffic outside. I approached the mirror, admiring its craftsmanship, when suddenly, I saw her, Evelyn Whitaker, standing in the reflection. She was dressed in a flowing gown, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. My heart pounded as I turned to face her. But the hallway was empty. There was no one there. Shaken, I backed away, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But the sight of her lingered in my mind, a haunting image that refused to fade. The next morning, I brought it up with Mrs. Langley, the longtime front desk manager. "Mrs. Langley, do you know anything about the woman in the mirror?" I asked, my voice tinged with unease. She gave me a knowing look, her eyes reflecting years of experience with the hotel's mysteries. "Ah, Evelyn Whitaker," she sighed. "She was one of our most esteemed guests. Tragically, she passed away here many years ago. Since then, her spirit hasn't found peace, and she often appears in the mirror, unable to move on, determined to get to the bottom of the haunting." I began delving into the hotel's history. I spent countless hours in the local archives, sifting through old newspapers and records, piecing together Evelyn's story. What I discovered was a tale of love, betrayal, and unresolved grief. Evelyn had been engaged to a prominent businessman, but their relationship had soured under the weight of his ambition and her own personal struggles. On the night of her death, it was rumored that she had confronted him in the very hallway where the mirror now hung, a confrontation that ended in tragedy. As the weeks went by, the occurrences intensified. Guests reported seeing Evelyn's reflection in the mirror, hearing her faint whispers, and feeling an inexplicable chill in the air. Staff members shared stories of objects moving on their own, doors slamming shut, and shadowy figures lurking just out of sight. The Magnolia Grand had always been a place of elegance and sophistication, but now, it seemed haunted by the very sorrow it sought to hide. One particularly stormy night, as lightning illuminated the darkened sky, I found myself alone in the hallway. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and sending shivers down my spine. I approached the mirror once more, the storm's fury reflected in its glass. As I stared into it, Evelyn appeared again, her eyes pleading and her expression one of deep anguish. "Why can't you let me go?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the thunderclap. I reached out, my fingers trembling, trying to offer comfort. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry for what happened. I want to help you find peace." The room seemed to grow colder, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil within the mirror. Evelyn's image flickered, her form wavering like a reflection in disturbed water. There are things left unsaid, she murmured. Memories that bind me to this place. Determined to help her, I sought out Mrs. Langley's guidance. She led me to the hotel's basement, where a forgotten office lay hidden behind a heavy door. Dust-covered desks and old photographs hinted at the lives that had passed through these walls. Among the debris, I found Evelyn's personal belongings, a diary, a photograph of her and her fiancé, and a faded letter addressed to her fiancé, never sent. As I read through her diary, I discovered the depth of her despair. Her words were filled with longing and regret, a desperate attempt to reach out to someone who had pushed her away. The letter revealed a final plea for understanding, a hope that one day, things would be different. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to perform a ritual to help Evelyn release her spirit. With Mrs. Langley's assistance, we set up a quiet space in the grand ballroom, placing Evelyn's belongings on a table and lighting candles to honor her memory. As we began the ritual, the atmosphere in the hotel shifted, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken emotions. Evelyn appeared one last time, her presence both ethereal and palpable. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with a sense of relief. "I can finally rest." As the final candle flickered out, the oppressive energy that had plagued the Magnolia Grand lifted, replaced by a serene calm that filled the room. The mirror no longer held her sorrowful reflection, and the hotel seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its haunted legacy finally laid to rest. In the days that followed, the disturbances ceased entirely. Guests returned to their peaceful stays, and the staff no longer spoke of shadowy figures or eerie whispers. The Magnolia Grand stood as a testament to resilience and redemption, its grand halls now filled with the echoes of laughter and joy once more. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that some spirits linger not out of malice but from a place of unresolved pain and unspoken words. By acknowledging Evelyn's story and offering her the closure she needed, we had not only freed her from her eternal torment but had also restored peace to a place that had long been shrouded in sorrow. And sometimes, when I pass by the grand mirror in the hallway, I see a faint shimmer, a gentle reminder of the woman who once haunted its reflection. It serves as a testament to the power of compassion and the enduring bonds that tie us to our past, ensuring that no story remains unheard and no soul remains restless. Because in the end, it's not just about the supernatural or the unexplained, it's about the human stories, the lingering emotions, and the capacity for redemption and closure that lies within us all. And as long as we remember and honor those who came before, their echoes will continue to resonate, guiding us toward understanding, peace, and the enduring magic of our shared humanity. Story number 2. Whispers on Route 66. Driving the old Route 66 through the heart of Texas was always an experience steeped in nostalgia and solitude. The highway, stretching endlessly through desolate landscapes and ghost towns, carried with it the echoes of countless stories and secrets. As a seasoned bus driver for the Greyhound Company, I'd spent years navigating its twists and turns. But nothing had prepared me for the haunting tales that locals whispered about the midnight runs. It was late October, and the nights were growing colder, the sky often blanketed with thick, ominous clouds that obscured the stars. My bus, a vintage model from the 1960s, creaked and groaned as it traversed the winding roads, its engine a comforting rumble in the otherwise silent darkness. The passengers were few, mostly late-night travelers seeking refuge from the storm brewing on the horizon. On this particular night, as the bus approached mile marker 134, a stretch of highway notorious for its eerie stillness, I felt a chill run down my spine. The road ahead was shrouded in mist, the headlights barely cutting through the dense fog. I glanced in the rearview mirror, ensuring all was in order, when I noticed something unusual. There, sitting in the back of the bus, was a woman in traditional Vietnamese attire, her face serene but her eyes hollow and distant. She was dressed in a flowing áo dai, the fabric shimmering under the dim interior lights. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, and she was gone, When I turned back, the seat was empty, as if she had vanished into thin air. I rubbed my eyes, trying to dismiss the image as a trick of the light or perhaps a reflection from the mirror. But the unease lingered, shaking off the feeling. I continued driving, the bus now filled with a heavy silence that pressed against my ears. Minutes later, another figure appeared this time, a man in a military uniform, his expression grim and haunted. His eyes met mine through the mirror, filled with sorrow and longing. Before I could react, he too vanished, leaving me alone with the oppressive darkness. My heart pounded as I considered the legends I'd heard from fellow drivers. They spoke of the ghost route, a desolate stretch where spirits of a tragic accident lingered, unable to find peace. Decades ago, a catastrophic bus crash had occurred at this very spot, claiming the lives of nearly 50 passengers. The spirits of those lost were said to roam the highway, their restless souls forever trapped in a cycle of fear and sorrow. Determined to make sense of the apparitions, I decided to slow down, giving the supernatural visitors space. But as I eased the bus into a lighter speed, the disturbances intensified. The temperature inside the bus dropped sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. The headlights flickered, casting long, wavering shadows that danced along the walls. I reached for the radio, hoping to find some clarity, but all I received was static. "Come on, baby," I muttered, trying to keep my nerves steady. The bus seemed to hum with an unseen energy, the air thick with the presence of the trapped spirits. Suddenly, the bus lurched forward, as if propelled by an invisible force. I fought to regain control, the steering wheel slipping through my grasp as the bus accelerated uncontrollably. The fog outside seemed to close in, the road twisting and turning in impossible ways. I could hear the distant sound of children laughing, their voices echoing through the mist like a haunting melody. "Please, let us go," a voice whispered, faint but clear. It was the woman's voice from earlier, filled with a desperate plea. "Help us find peace." Tears welled up in my eyes as the realization hit me. I couldn't continue driving like this. The spirits were reaching out, seeking closure for their untimely deaths. I had to help them, not just for their sake, but for my own sanity. Pulling over to the side of the road, I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. The bus seemed to settle, the oppressive energy lifting slightly. I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out a notebook, jotting down everything I had experienced in the hope that someone might understand the horrors that plagued Route 66. Determined to honor the spirits, I began researching the accident, reaching out to local historians and families of the victims. What I uncovered was a tale of tragedy and unanswered questions. A night when a bus carrying eager passengers to a family reunion collided with a truck in a violent storm, leaving the highway scarred by the wreckage and the lives lost. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to take a stand. On the anniversary of the accident, I organized a memorial service, inviting the families of the victims and the local community to come together and remember those who had perished. We gathered at the site of the crash, laying wreaths and sharing stories, the air filled with a sense of sorrow and hope. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the desolate highway, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The bus no longer felt like a vessel of fear, but a symbol of remembrance and respect. The spirits of those lost could finally find the closure they had long sought, their restless souls given the acknowledgement and honor they deserved. In the weeks that followed, the disturbances on Route 66 ceased, the highway returning to its tranquil state. The legends of the ghost route became a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of memory. I continued driving the route, now with a renewed sense of purpose and reverence, knowing that I had played a part in helping the spirits find peace. And sometimes, on the darkest of nights, when the mist rolls in thick and the road stretches out endlessly before me, I can still hear the faint echoes of their voices, a gentle reminder that their stories live on, guiding me through the night with their lingering presence and the promise of peace. Because in the end, is not just about the supernatural or the unexplained, it's about the human stories, the lingering emotions, and the capacity for redemption and closure that lies within us all. And as long as we remember and honor those who came before, their echoes will continue to resonate, guiding us toward understanding, peace, and the enduring bonds of our shared humanity. Story number 3. Echoes of the Final Curtain. I've always been drawn to the old theaters of New York, their grandeur a testament to a bygone era of glamour and artistry. When I landed a job as a stage manager at the historic Harrington Theater, nestled in the heart of the city, I felt like I had stepped into a living museum. The theater, with its ornate balconies, plush red seats, and gilded proscenium arch, was a masterpiece preserved through decades of performances and renovations. The Harrington had a storied past, but one tale stood out among the rest: the tragic story of Eleanor Hartley, a beloved soprano who had graced its stage in the late 1950s. Eleanor was known for her hauntingly beautiful voice and captivating presence, drawing audiences into the very soul of each performance. But behind the spotlight, a darkness brewed. It was said that Eleanor struggled with the pressures of fame and a tumultuous personal life, leading her to take her own life backstage one fateful night. Since then, whispers circulated that her spirit remained tethered to the theater, unable to find peace. When I first heard the rumors, I dismissed them as mere ghost stories spun by superstitious staff and old-timers. But as I settled into my role, strange occurrences began to unfold, challenging my skepticism and plunging me into a nightmarish reality. It started subtly, doors creaking open on their own, cold drafts sweeping through the theater despite the absence of wind, and unexplained shadows dancing in the corners of my vision. First, I attributed these incidents to the theater's aging infrastructure or the long hours taking a toll on my mind. However, the disturbances escalated, growing more frequent and unsettling. One evening, after a long day of rehearsals, I was alone in the backstage area, preparing for the next morning's performance of Ida. The theater was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of traffic outside and the occasional drip of water from a leaky pipe. I was reviewing the stage cues when a soft, ethereal melody began to drift through the air, a song I recognized all too well. "Eleanor," I whispered, my heart pounding. It was the same haunting aria she was famous for, a piece that had mesmerized audiences and now, seemingly, lured her back into our world. I scanned the darkened stage, but there was no one there. The melody grew louder, more insistent, as if beckoning me to follow its source. Compelled by a mixture of fear and curiosity, I made my way toward the orchestra pit. The air grew colder with each step, the temperature dropping to an uncomfortable chill. As I approached, the melody intensified, wrapping around me like a spectral embrace. Suddenly, the music ceased, and the room plunged into oppressive silence. I stood frozen, heart racing. As the temperature plummeted further, out of the shadows emerged a figure tall, graceful, and draped in an elegant gown reminiscent of Eleanor's iconic stage costumes. Her eyes, hollow and filled with sorrow, met mine, and for a moment, I felt a profound sadness emanating from her very being. "Why can't you move on?" she whispered, her voice echoing through the empty theater. "The curtain never falls for me." I swallowed hard, struggling to find my voice. "Eleanor, I'm sorry. I didn't know." She floated closer, her presence overwhelming. "You must remember us. Remember our stories, our pain, our triumphs. Only then can we find peace." Before I could respond, a gust of wind swept through the theater, extinguishing the stage lights and plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam piercing the blackness as I searched for her. When I finally caught a glimpse, she was gone, leaving behind only the lingering echo of her plea. The next day, I sought answers, determined to understand the ghostly apparition that haunted the Harrington Theater. I delved into old archives, uncovering news clippings and personal letters that painted a picture of Eleanor's turbulent life. Her suicide had left many questions unanswered, and it became clear that her spirit was trapped by the unresolved grief and unfinished business that tethered her to the mortal realm. Driven by a mix of empathy and fear, I reached out to Madame Liang, a renowned medium known for her ability to communicate with restless spirits. She agreed to visit the theater, bringing with her an array of spiritual tools and an air of calm determination. On the night of her visit, the theater was shrouded in darkness, the stage bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. Madame Liang set up her equipment, arranging crystals and smudging the space with sage to cleanse any lingering negative energy. As she began her séance, the atmosphere thickened, the air heavy with anticipation. "Eleanor," Madame Liang intoned, her voice steady, "we honor your presence. If you are here, please communicate with us." The temperature in the room dropped, and the candle flames flickered as if reacting to an unseen force. Suddenly, the stage was filled with an ethereal light, and Eleanor's apparition materialized once more, her expression softer, tinged with a hint of hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice no longer filled with anguish. "You have listened. We can finally rest." As the ritual concluded, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Replaced by a serene calm, Eleanor's spirit faded, leaving behind a sense of peace that had eluded the theater for decades. Madame Liang assured us that the spirits of the past had found the closure they needed, and the theater was free from their haunting presence. In the weeks that followed, the Harrington Theater returned to its former glory, the strange occurrences ceasing as if they had never happened. The legends of Eleanor Hartley became a cherished part of the theater's history, a reminder of the enduring power of art and the importance of honoring those who have come before us. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that the theater was more than just a venue for performances. It was a living entity, a repository of memories, emotions, and stories that transcended time. By embracing the spirit of Eleanor and helping her find peace, we had not only freed the theater from its haunting legacy but also strengthened the bonds within our own family, ensuring that our traditions and stories would continue to resonate through the ages. And sometimes, during a quiet rehearsal or a late-night practice, I catch a faint echo of Eleanor's aria drifting through the halls, a gentle reminder that the spirits of the past watch over us, their voices intertwined with our own, guiding us toward a future filled with hope, understanding, and the enduring magic of the stage. Because in the heart of every old theater lies the essence of countless souls, each with their own story to tell, and it's up to us to listen, remember, and honor their legacies, ensuring that their voices continue to echo through the corridors of time, inspiring generations to come. Story number 4. Whispers through the hallways. I've always been fascinated by old buildings, especially those steeped in history and mystery. So when I stumbled upon the Whitmore Inn, an aging hotel nestled in the heart of rural Pennsylvania, I couldn't resist its allure. The Whitmore had once been a bustling hub for travelers and locals alike, its grand facade and elegant architecture a testament to a bygone era. But over the years, it had fallen into disrepair, its vibrant life dimmed by time and neglect. Despite its current state, the Whitmore Inn held a certain charm that drew me in. As a freelance writer with a penchant for uncovering the hidden stories of forgotten places, I saw it as the perfect subject for my next project. Little did I know, the inn harbored secrets darker than I could have ever imagined. Upon arriving, I was greeted by the inn's caretaker, Mrs. Evelyn Harris, a stern yet kind woman in her late 60s. Her silver hair was neatly tied back, and her piercing blue eyes seemed to hold countless untold stories. "Welcome to the Whitmore Inn," she said, her voice steady. "Let me show you to your room." The interior was a relic of the past, with faded wallpaper, ornate moldings, and antique furnishings that whispered of elegant dinners and lively gatherings long gone. I settled into my room, a spacious space with a large window overlooking the overgrown gardens. Determined to capture the essence of the inn, I began exploring its many nooks and crannies, documenting every detail with my camera and notebook. That night, as I sat by the window, the silence of the inn was profound, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the rustling of leaves outside. I decided to head to the lounge for a cup of tea, hoping to soak in the atmosphere. The lounge was dimly lit, with a grand fireplace crackling softly and a collection of dusty books lining the shelves. I found an old armchair near the window and settled in, enjoying the tranquility. But as the night deepened, an unsettling feeling began to creep over me. It started with a faint sound, almost like soft footsteps echoing through the halls. I glanced up, expecting to see a guest or perhaps Mrs. Harris. But the lounge remained empty, shaking off the unease. I tried to focus on my writing, but the footsteps persisted, growing louder and more distinct. Curiosity overcame my apprehension, and I decided to investigate. Grabbing a flashlight, I made my way down the grand staircase, the beam cutting through the darkness as I navigated the narrow corridors. The sound of footsteps seemed to follow me, every step echoing off the aged walls. I reached the end of the hallway and turned to see a shadowy figure standing at the far end, a man in a tailored suit, his face obscured by darkness. My heart raced as I approached, but as I drew closer, the figure vanished into thin air. I stood there, breathless and bewildered, the oppressive silence returning as quickly as the disturbance. Determined to understand what was happening, I returned to my room and began researching the Whitmore Inn's history. Through old newspaper clippings and local archives, I uncovered the tragic story of Eleanor Whitmore, the inn's original owner. Eleanor had been a beloved figure in the community, known for her generosity and the lively events she hosted. But behind her gracious facade, Eleanor struggled with loneliness and despair. One fateful New Year's Eve, she was found dead in her office, the circumstances surrounding her death shrouded in mystery. Rumors of foul play and unresolved tension swirled, leaving her spirit restless and bound to the inn. As I delved deeper, I discovered accounts from previous guests and staff who had experienced similar phenomena: unexplained footsteps, shadowy apparitions, and the haunting melody of a piano playing in empty rooms. It became clear that Eleanor's spirit was unable to find peace, her lingering sorrow echoing through the halls of the Whitmore Inn. Determined to help, I decided to conduct my own séance, hoping to communicate with Eleanor and offer her the closure she so desperately needed. I reached out to a local medium, Madame Clara, who specialized in restless spirits and haunted locations. She agreed to meet me at the inn, bringing with her an array of spiritual tools and a calm, reassuring presence. On the night of the séance, the atmosphere in the inn was tense, the air thick with anticipation and a touch of fear. We gathered in the lounge, sitting in a circle with candles lit around us, their flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. Madame Clara began the ritual, her voice steady as she invoked Eleanor's spirit. "Eleanor Whitmore," she intoned, "we honor your presence. If you are here, please communicate with us." The temperature in the room dropped noticeably, and the candles flickered as if stirred by an unseen force. A soft whisper filled the air, the words indistinct at first but gradually forming a coherent message. "Help me." Eleanor's apparition materialized before us, her form translucent yet unmistakably recognizable as the inn's original owner. Her eyes, filled with sorrow, met mine, and I felt a surge of empathy for her restless spirit. "Why can't I move on?" she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I am trapped in this place, unable to leave." I stepped forward, my heart aching for her pain. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry for your loss. Let us help you find peace." Madame Clara guided me through the next steps, encouraging me to share my own experiences and offering words of comfort. Together, we worked to honor Eleanor's memory, performing rituals and offering offerings to help her spirit find the closure it needed. Over the following weeks, the disturbances at the Whitmore Inn began to subside. The footsteps grew less frequent, and the shadowy figures became less distinct, fading into the background as if their presence was gradually diminishing. the oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and tranquility that had long eluded the inn. One night, as I sat by the window once more, the soft melody of a piano drifted through the air, but this time, it was gentle and soothing, devoid of the haunting sorrow that had characterized Eleanor's presence. I knew, deep down, that her spirit had finally found peace, her story acknowledged and honored by those who cared enough to listen. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that the Whitmore Inn was more than just a historical building. It was a living testament to the enduring power of love, loss, and the human spirit. By embracing Eleanor's story and offering her the closure she needed, we had not only freed her from her eternal torment but also revitalized the inn, breathing new life into its once stagnant halls. The Whitmore Inn now stands as a beacon of hope and remembrance, its haunted past transformed into a legacy of compassion and understanding. Guests still visit, drawn by the inn's rich history and the stories of those who came before. But the darkness that once plagued the halls has been replaced by a welcoming warmth and a sense of peace. And sometimes, when the night is still and the moon casts a gentle glow through the grand windows, I can hear the faint echoes of Eleanor's piano melody, a beautiful reminder that even in the depths of despair, there is always a path to redemption and peace. Because in the heart of every haunted place lies a story waiting to be heard, a soul yearning for closure, and a reminder that love and compassion can transcend the boundaries of life and death. Because in the end, it's not just about the supernatural or the unexplained, it's about the human stories, the lingering emotions, and the capacity for redemption and closure that lies within us all. And as long as we remember and honor those who came before, their echoes will continue to resonate, guiding us toward understanding, peace, and the enduring bonds of our shared humanity. Story number 5. Melody of the Forgotten Room. I've always been drawn to old buildings, their decaying facades and whispered histories calling to me like the distant notes of a forgotten symphony. So when I accepted a position as the night shift supervisor at St. Elmo's Hospital in rural California, I felt a strange sense of excitement. The hospital, a sprawling structure built in the early 1900s, stood as a monument to bygone medical practices and silent tragedies. Its ornate architecture and labyrinthine corridors held stories that the daylight hours kept hidden from the bustling world outside. My role was straightforward enough: oversee the night operations, ensure everything ran smoothly, and address any issues that arose during the quiet hours. The first few nights were uneventful, filled with the usual sounds of distant traffic and the occasional night owl patient wandering the halls. But it wasn't long before the peculiar incidents began to unfold. It started subtly, a faint strain of classical music echoing through the empty corridors late at night. First, I chalked it up to the hospital's old sound system acting up, or perhaps a patient's forgotten CD player left on in a room. The melodies were soothing yet eerie, a melancholic waltz that seemed out of place in the sterile environment of a hospital. One particularly still night, around midnight, the music grew louder, more distinct. The haunting notes of a piano sonata reverberated through the halls, bouncing off the high ceilings and ornate moldings. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way towards the source, following the sound as it led me deeper into the heart of the hospital. The music seemed to emanate from an abandoned wing, a section of the hospital that had been closed off years ago after a series of unfortunate events. The doors were padlocked, and a large sign warned visitors of hazardous conditions. But tonight, the doors stood ajar, inviting me into the darkness beyond. As I stepped inside, the air grew colder, the temperature dropping noticeably. The once grand hallway was now shrouded in shadows, the flickering lights casting long, wavering silhouettes on the walls. The sound of the piano grew louder, guiding me towards a large, ornate door at the end of the corridor. Pushing the door open, I found myself in what used to be the hospital's grand ballroom. Dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight, and cobwebs clung to the chandeliers hanging overhead. The room was eerily silent now, the music having ceased, leaving behind an oppressive stillness that pressed down on me. In the center of the ballroom stood an old grand piano. Its keys yellowed with age and its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. I approached the instrument cautiously, my flashlight revealing the intricate carvings and faded sheet music scattered across the stand. It was clear that no one had touched the piano in years. As I examined the room, a sudden chill swept through the space, and I felt a presence behind me, spinning around. I saw nothing but shadows dancing at the edge of my vision. My heart raced as I turned back to the piano, noticing a single sheet of music propped open on the keys. The notes were handwritten, the ink smudged but still legible. Curiosity overcoming my apprehension, I reached out to touch the sheet. As my fingers brushed the paper, the temperature plummeted further, and the grand piano began to play on its own. The haunting melody filled the room once more, the same melancholic tune that had drawn me here. I backed away, feeling an invisible force pressing against my chest, making it difficult to breathe. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. No response came, only the relentless playing of the piano. I glanced around, desperately seeking an explanation, but the ballroom remained empty. The oppressive atmosphere intensified, the air thick with an unspoken sorrow that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to delve into the hospital's archives the next day. After work, I made my way to the administrative office, a dusty room filled with old records and forgotten files. Sifting through the paperwork, I came across a folder labeled "Abandoned Wing, 1924. Inside, I found newspaper clippings and personal journals detailing the tragic history of the ballroom. According to the records, the grand ballroom had been the site of countless celebrations and gatherings, a place where patients and staff alike found a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos of medical treatments. But in the early 1920s, the ballroom became the backdrop for a series of unexplained deaths and accidents. A particularly harrowing incident involved Eleanor Hartley, a talented pianist who had been brought to St. Elmo's for psychiatric care after a personal tragedy. Eleanor was known for her mesmerizing performances, her ability to bring solace to those who listened. But her brilliance was overshadowed by her troubled mind, and she was often seen wandering the halls late at night, lost in her own melodies. One fateful night, Eleanor vanished without a trace, her body never found. The ballroom was subsequently abandoned, the tragic events haunting the staff and leading to the wing's closure. As I pieced together Eleanor's story, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. It seemed that her spirit was bound to the grand piano, her unfinished symphony echoing through the empty halls. Unable to find peace, the music was her plea for help, a desperate attempt to communicate her unresolved sorrow and untimely demise. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the ballroom the following night, determined to confront the lingering spirit and help Eleanor find closure. As midnight approached, the atmosphere grew heavy, the same haunting melody beginning to play once more. I stood in the center of the ballroom, my flashlight casting long shadows as I called out to Eleanor. "Eleanor, I know your story. I'm here to help you find peace," I declared, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. The air grew colder, and the grand piano's music swelled, the notes filled with a palpable longing. Suddenly, the apparition of Eleanor Hartley materialized before me, her ethereal form shimmering in the dim light. Her eyes, filled with sorrow and desperation, met mine, and I felt a connection that transcended the boundaries of life and death. "Why can't I move on?" she whispered, her voice a haunting echo. "I'm trapped here, my symphony incomplete." I took a deep breath, reaching out to her with empathy. "Eleanor, I understand. Let me help you finish your symphony, so you can finally rest." With determination, I approached the piano, the keys responding to my touch as I began to play. The melody flowed through me, each note infused with the pain and longing that Eleanor had endured. As I played, the atmosphere in the ballroom shifted, the oppressive sorrow giving way to a sense of hope and release. Eleanor's apparition watched silently, her form growing more translucent as the music reached its crescendo. The final notes lingered in the air, and a peaceful silence settled over the room. Eleanor's spirit began to fade, her expression softening into one of gratitude and tranquility. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with relief. "I can finally rest." As her spirit vanished, the grand piano ceased its playing. The ballroom bathed in a serene calm. The oppressive presence that had haunted the hospital for decades was lifted, replaced by a sense of closure and peace that had long eluded us. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences at St. Elmo's Hospital ceased entirely. The abandoned wing was finally reopened, transformed into a memorial space honoring the lives lost and the spirits that had once roamed its halls. The grand piano stood as a centerpiece, its keys no longer haunted by the echoes of unfinished melodies, but serving as a tribute to Eleanor Hartley's enduring legacy. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that some spirits linger not out of malice but from a place of unresolved sorrow and a yearning for closure. By listening to their stories and addressing their pain, we can help bridge the gap between the living and the dead, ensuring that no voice remains unheard and no soul remains restless. And sometimes, late at night, when the moon casts long shadows through the hospital's high windows, I can still hear the faint strains of a piano sonata drifting through the halls, a gentle reminder of the power of compassion and the enduring spirit of those who have come before us. Because in the end, it's not just about the haunting or the unexplained, it's about the human stories, the lingering emotions, and the capacity for redemption and closure that lies within us all. And as long as we remember and honor those who came before, their echoes will continue to resonate, guiding us toward understanding, peace, and the everlasting bonds of our shared humanity. Story number 6. Echoes of the Final Curtain. I've always been enamored with the world of theater, the magic that happens behind the scenes, the camaraderie among cast and crew, and the thrill of bringing a story to life on stage. So when I landed the position of assistant director at the historic Lyric Theater in Chicago, I felt like I was stepping into a dream. The Lyric, with its ornate architecture and storied past, had been a staple of the city's cultural scene for over a century. Its red velvet curtains, gilded balconies, and grand proscenium arch exuded an old-world charm that was both captivating and slightly eerie. The production we were preparing was a modern take on a classic tragedy, and the cast was a mix of seasoned actors and promising newcomers. Among them was Tom Harrington, a charismatic lead actor whose presence on stage was nothing short of mesmerizing. Tom had a reputation for his intense performances and dedication to his craft, but there was something about him that hinted at a deeper, more complex soul. Rehearsals went smoothly, the cast and crew working tirelessly to perfect every scene. The theater buzzed with energy, the air thick with anticipation for opening night. However, as the premiere drew closer, strange occurrences began to disrupt our routine, casting a shadow over the excitement. It started innocently enough, doors creaking open on their own, lights flickering inexplicably, and the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the empty corridors late at night. First, we dismissed these incidents as mere quirks of the old building or the result of our exhausted minds after long hours. But as the disturbances grew more frequent and intense, skepticism gave way to unease. One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, I found myself alone in the dressing room. The room was dimly lit, the mirrors reflecting the tired faces of the cast members. As I checked the costumes and props, I heard a soft melody drifting through the air, a haunting, sorrowful tune that seemed to emanate from the very walls. I turned, trying to locate the source, but the room remained empty. Probably just the wind, I muttered to myself, shaking off the chill that had settled over me. But deep down, I knew there was something more sinister at play. The next day, Tom approached me, his expression grave. "Have you noticed anything strange happening here lately?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, sharing my own experiences. "Yeah, has been unsettling. I thought it was just old building noises, but it feels different somehow. Tom sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I've been hearing things too. Sometimes, after rehearsals, I feel like someone's watching me from the shadows, and there's this song that keeps playing on loop in my mind, no matter where I am. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, I decided to dig into the theater's history. I spent hours in the local archives, poring over old newspapers and records, searching for any clue that might explain the strange happenings. What I discovered was a tragic story that had been buried in the annals of the Lyric's past. Decades ago, the Lyric Theater had been home to a production of a similar tragedy, starring a young actress named Eleanor Whitaker. Eleanor was a rising star, beloved by both her peers and the audience for her undeniable talent and vibrant spirit. But during one fateful performance, Eleanor disappeared without a trace. The night was stormy, the power flickering ominously as the final act unfolded. After the show, Eleanor was nowhere to be found. An extensive search yielded no results, and rumors swirled about a possible accident backstage. The production was abruptly canceled, and the Lyric fell into a state of disrepair, its haunting memories lingering in the shadows. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a surge of determination to uncover the truth behind the disturbances plaguing our current production. I shared my findings with Tom, who suggested we reach out to a paranormal investigator he had heard about through an old theater network, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Carter, known for her expertise in haunted locations and restless spirits. Dr. Carter arrived at the Lyric Theater the following week, her presence calm and authoritative. She set up her equipment in the main auditorium, placing EMF detectors, spirit boxes, and motion sensors throughout the building. As she began her investigation, the atmosphere in the theater shifted, the air growing heavy with anticipation and unspoken fears. We're dealing with a classic case of residual haunting, Dr. Carter explained, her eyes scanning the monitors displaying fluctuating readings. It seems Eleanor's spirit is trapped, reliving her final moments and unable to move on. The music you've been hearing is likely her attempt to communicate or seek closure. We decided to conduct a séance after one of our late-night rehearsals, hoping to make direct contact with Eleanor's spirit. The cast and crew gathered in the auditorium, forming a circle around the stage as Dr. Carter led us through the ritual. Candles were lit, their flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls, and the room filled with the scent of burning sage meant to cleanse the space of negative energy. As the clock struck midnight, the air grew colder, and the lights dimmed to a soft glow. Dr. Carter began to chant softly, her voice steady and soothing. The temperature dropped further, and a palpable tension filled the room. Suddenly, the grand chandelier swayed gently, despite the absence of any breeze, and the haunting melody of Eleanor's song began to play through the spirit box. The voice clear yet filled with sorrow. "Why can't I rest?" the voice echoed, sending shivers down my spine. "I need help." The room fell silent, the only sound the distant drip of water from a leaky pipe. Dr. Carter turned to us, her expression somber. "Eleanor is reaching out for closure. We need to honor her memory and help her find peace." Determined to assist the restless spirit, we delved deeper into Eleanor's story, uncovering details about her personal struggles and the pressures she faced during her rise to fame. It became evident that Eleanor had been battling inner demons, and her untimely death had left unresolved grief and unspoken words that bound her spirit to the Lyric Theater. We decided to hold a memorial performance in Eleanor's honor, a way to celebrate her life and acknowledge the pain she had endured. The cast and crew poured their hearts into the production, infusing each performance with a newfound sense of purpose and reverence. As we rehearsed, the disturbances began to subside, the once frequent noises growing quieter and less intrusive. The night of the memorial performance arrived, and the auditorium was filled with family, friends, and theater enthusiasts eager to pay their respects. The air was thick with emotion as we took the stage, each cast member channeling their own empathy and compassion into their roles. The performance was a tribute to Eleanor's legacy, a heartfelt homage to her talent and the struggles she had faced. As we reached the final scene, the stage lights dimmed, and the haunting melody of Eleanor's song filled the air once more. This time, however, there was a sense of peace and acceptance woven into the notes. The cast stood together, holding hands as we invited Eleanor's spirit to join us in this moment of closure. The atmosphere in the auditorium changed, the oppressive tension replaced by a serene calm. The shadows seemed to lift, and a gentle breeze swept through the room, carrying with it the faint scent of roses, a favorite flower of Eleanor's. The music swelled, the notes now filled with hope and release, as if Eleanor had finally found the peace she had sought for so long. A soft, ethereal glow enveloped the stage, and for a brief moment, Eleanor's apparition appeared among us. Her eyes filled with gratitude and serenity. She smiled gently, her presence no longer haunting but rather comforting, a symbol of the closure we had collectively achieved. With a final, peaceful melody, her spirit faded, leaving behind a lingering sense of harmony and fulfillment. In the weeks that followed, the Lyric Theater seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the lingering shadows and eerie disturbances becoming distant memories. The memorial performance had not only honored Eleanor's memory but had also united our cast and crew in a shared sense of purpose and understanding. The theater, once burdened by its tragic past, now stood as a beacon of hope and resilience, its legacy enriched by the stories of those who had walked its halls before us. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that the true magic of theater lies not just in the performances on stage but in the connections we forge with each other and the spirits of the past. By honoring Eleanor's memory and addressing the unresolved pain that had bound her spirit, we had not only freed her from her eternal torment but had also strengthened the bonds within our own theatrical family. And sometimes, late at night, when the theater is quiet and the moon casts long shadows through the grand windows, I can still hear the faint strains of Eleanor's song, a beautiful reminder that love, compassion, and remembrance have the power to transcend the boundaries of life and death. Because in the end, it's not just about the supernatural or the unexplained, it's about the human stories, the lingering emotions, and the capacity for redemption and closure that lies within us all. And as long as we remember and honor those who came before, their echoes will continue to resonate, guiding us toward understanding, peace, and the enduring magic of the theater.